Okay, hi everybody. So in this video here, we're going to take a look at this rational equation, 9 minus x squared over x squared plus 9 all squared in the denominator equal to 0. Now, when I dive into this, even before I start to solve this, just a couple of things I'm going to do. First of all, remember that if I've got a divided by b is equal to 0, when I'm working with an equation like this, I really want to make sure that my denominator doesn't go to 0. So I want to find values of the variable, the independent variable here, which is x, that are going to force that equation to be equal to 0. Okay. Um, and I say independent variable here because one option here, we could graph it, right? We could turn that into a function and look for x-intercepts, but we're going to do this algebraically. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to square root both sides, and the square root of 0 is 0. And then I'm going to bring that 9 over, and I'm going to subtract 9 from both sides. And right there's a potential for a very common mistake to get made. Oftentimes people will simply add 9 to both sides because they see it added to the left and they think, well, they have to add it to the right to balance it. But that's actually not how that works. When you see it here as x squared plus 9, that 9 is already there. What I want to do to balance it is to get rid of it from both sides. So I'm going to subtract it from both sides. Now, at this point here, I would take the square root of both sides, getting my plus or minus, but I end up with a square root of negative 9, which means right away I'm going to get an answer that's not real. And so that actually tells me that that there are no non-permissibles that are going to be real values. So there's no non-permissibles in this particular case. I suspect for most of you that are watching this, you're going to be restricted to the real numbers here. So this just simply means that there's no restrictions on the variable in terms of real numbers. The other thing that I'm going to do to this equation before I go any further here is I want my math to look pretty. Okay. I don't like the way it looks when I look up here and I see this 9 minus x squared. That feels wrong. There's nothing wrong with it, but it would look better if I just changed the order there and made it x squared plus 9 over x squared plus 9 squared equals 0. Okay, that looks better. I like having that variable first. Now, but I'm not a huge fan of having that negative in front there. So the other thing that I'm going to do to make this look a little bit better is I'm going to factor out that negative. And I am much happier with how that equation looks. And I love the fact that in math, I can do that. I can look at an equation and make some changes as long as I'm not breaking any rules here. I can make the changes here to make it look like something that I'm more comfortable with. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply both sides of my equation by that denominator. So it's going to cancel on the left-hand side. I'm going to be left with negative x squared minus 9. And then 0 multiplied by that denominator is just going to be 0. I will divide both sides by that negative that I'm seeing out front. And so I'm going to get x squared minus 9 is equal to 0. And now there are two ways of doing this. Okay. At this point here, I could factor this and get x minus 3, x plus 3 is equal to 0. It's a difference of squares. Or I could simply bring that 9 over. Now over here, either x minus 3 equals 0 or x plus 3 is equal to 0, in which case I would bring over the 3's there. And I'm either going to get x is equal to positive 3 or x is equal to negative 3. Over here, and I suspect a lot of people, okay, are going to prefer to do this method right here, which is fine. You just have to remember that when you take the square root, okay, there's a little bit of ambiguity here because the variable x was being squared. There's a little bit of ambiguity because I don't know whether the value of that variable should have been positive or negative. All I know is that when I squared that variable, it became a positive value. So I don't really know here. So you need to make sure that you put that plus or minus in front. And then the square root of 9 is 3. So either way, I'm getting the same answer. There's a couple ways you can do it. Just make sure that if you're going to choose this method right here, that you are doing that plus or minus.